Statistics 3, confidence interval for a mean. Type 4, finding the sample mean and the standard deviation. So in this case, we're actually going to be working backwards a bit because we're actually given the confidence interval. And we're told that it's a 95% confidence interval. So again, our critical values are going to be 1.96. We have a random sample of 100 men, so that's our sample size. And what we want to do is we want to try and find the sample mean height and the standard deviation. Okay, so again, because it's 95% confidence interval of the mean, well, what's our formula? Well, it's the sample mean plus or minus 1.96 times our standard error of the mean. Our standard error of the mean, sigma over root n, can be found on page 34 of your maths tables. However, the rest of the formula, the 95% confidence interval for mean, is not in the maths tables. So again, you need to know that off by heart, and especially your confidence interval there, the 1.96, the critical value, I should say. Okay, so this time what we have is, if I break up my formula into the left-hand side and then the right-hand side, well then what I know is that this is 177.22 centimetres and this is 179.18 centimetres. So all I have to do is try and separate out what I know. So in other words, if I take the left-hand side of the equation there, well, I have the sample mean minus my critical value, 1.96, times sigma over root n. Well, what is n? N is 100 men. So I have the square root of 100, and that's equal to 177.22. So if I was to actually calculate the left-hand side there, I'd end up with 177.22 centimetres. So therefore, the square root of 100 is 10, so that simplifies down to 0.196 times sigma. So essentially what we're going to end up with here is a simultaneous equations. Now there are other ways in which you could approach this, but we love nothing better than a good simultaneous equation. We're happy with them, we're comfortable with them, so we may as well stick to what we always know best, okay? But of course, if you come up with an alternative version for the solution and you want to run it by me, that is perfectly fine too. There are definitely other ways, okay? But I find students will always remember this way, so that's why I tend to stick with this, okay? So we have 179.18 is going to be the right-hand side. And again, if I get the square root of 100, that's 10. Divide that into 1.96, gives us 0.196 sigma. That's 179.18. Okay, so let's line up our two equations and solve our simultaneous equations then. So we have sigma minus 0.196, the mean, sample mean minus 0.196 sigma is equal to 177.22, while the sample mean plus 0.196 sigma is equal to 179.18. So equation 1, equation 2, and of course our margin of error is obviously going to cancel there. So by adding those two together and halving that, we end up with our sample mean. And then if I want to sub our sample mean into 1 over 2, well, what that gives me is 178.2 minus 0.196 sigma is equal to 177.22. And if I get that on its own, that gives me 0.98, and therefore sigma is 5. Okay? Nice and easy. Okay, so if we want to have a look at some questions on exercise 5.2 in book 2, this is page 150. So we've looked at 4 different types of questions there, so quite a lot in that, but not a lot of questions. So we have question 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 10 and 11. So on page 150, 151, question 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 10 and 11.